How do you conclude a perfect essay? How do you wrap up all the work that you've done, from the introduction to the body paragraph to making sure all your I's are dotted and all your T's are crossed? How do you conclude? The conclusion is also one of the most essential parts of your writing task. If you do not end well, chances are that everything that you've done from the beginning will stand on a very weak foundation. And your conclusion has a way of giving the examiner that full closure that the examiner needs to decide that this person has displayed maximum communicative competence using the English language. So let's jump straight into it. A conclusion should not be more than 3 to 5 sentences long. In your conclusion, you are not introducing any new idea or argument in your conclusion. This is a very significant mistake that a lot of candidates or test takers make. They get to the conclusion and they start developing a new point, a new argument. Some people even go all the way to introduce a statement that directly contradicts their thesis in the conclusion. Please do not do this. You can save yourself all of this stress if you do what? You interpret the question, you make an outline before you start. Interpreting and making an outline, a clear outline, allows you to stay on point on your thesis or your opinion and not veer away from it or bring in irrelevant details. The conclusion, like I said, is quite short. The conclusion does not need you to say too much. The most important thing you want to do in your conclusion when you start is to use a connective that shows that you are concluding. And the connective that you use for your conclusion would be easily, in conclusion, to conclude, to summarize. Finally, all these connectives indicate that you are starting your conclusion. After you do that, the next thing that you do in the conclusion structure is to briefly summarize your main points. I'll repeat that. You briefly summarize your main points. A lot of candidates do not do this in their conclusion, and this is how they end up losing marks that could confidently shoot them from a band 6 or a band 7 to a band 8 or a band 9. Briefly summarize your main points using just one simple sentence or 2 compound sentences. For example, in conclusion, this paper has been able to show that the father is a much more important member of the family unit than any other person, in bracket, the mother, because he is a disciplinarian and also the breadwinner. That easily sums up all the main points that I've used in that essay before. After you do that, you could restate your thesis. Restating your thesis is just basically saying your opinion again, in other words, in your conclusion. Restating your thesis allows the examiner to see that there's a connecting thread from your introduction to your conclusion. The statement I gave earlier has my thesis restated and also has the main points summarized in it. The next thing that you do after restating your thesis and summarizing your main points is to bring your essay to a clear, satisfying end. How do you do this? There are several strategies that you can use. The one I subscribe to, I use the most, is to make a prediction. Making a prediction helps you end your conclusion on a strong, confident note. In the next 15 years, I assume that more people will start championing the cause of fathers as being the most important members of the family unit. That is a prediction. You could also make a recommendation. From the points provided above, I would recommend that more people get educated or enlightened about how or why the father should be regarded as the most important member of the family unit. You could also throw in a rhetorical question. A rhetorical question is a question that ordinarily does not require a direct answer. It is a question that is often used to emphasize or underline a point that has been made earlier. If I'm ending my essay with a rhetorical question, it could be something like this. Given all the points provided in this essay or in this write-up, it is safe to assume that any sane person would not question the role of the father in the family unit. So I ask, is there anyone more important? That question leaves the examiner on that suspense nose. It leaves the examiner hanging and leaves the examiner wondering or ruminating over that question. It helps you end your essay on a very powerful note. Rhetorical questions are used by expert language users. So I would advise that if you're going to use a rhetorical question, be sure that your competence level is quite solid. Predictions, recommendations, rhetorical questions all help you to end your essay on a much more confident note. Please, like I said earlier, do not introduce any new ideas or new arguments in your conclusion. For your writing task 2, what are the things that you must do? What are the things that you must not do? For the writing task 2, which has been the task that we have been dealing with since, the most important thing that you must do is to be aware of the different essay types, different essay questions, different types, different forms that the questions might come through. Being aware of them means that you are sure that you know of their existence and that you have done at least 1 or 2 practice essays on each of these question types before the day of the test. In a previous video, we have mentioned and we have gone through the peculiar question types that you might get for the IELTS writing task, and we have outlined the essential structures that they have and the strategies that you can use to ensure that you get a successful result for any or for each of those question types. The second thing that you must do in the IELTS is to have a plan for planning. I'll repeat, have a plan for planning. Planning your essay before you write it is perhaps the most important thing that you can do to ensure that you succeed in the IELTS writing section. Do not, by any means, write an essay that you have not outlined your ideas, that you have not prioritized your ideas, that you have not generated supporting details or examples for. Like I said in an earlier video, separate the tasks of ideas generation from vocabulary generation, and your plan does this for you. Your plan is also part of the interpreting the question process. It is also part of the outlining your ideas process. It is also part of the brainstorming to generate ideas process. It is also part of the prioritizing the ideas that you've listed out to see which ones should be discarded, which ones must be included. It is also part of the generating the supporting details or examples that you will use in your essay to expand your points. All these fall under the plan. A plan is essential for you to get a band 9, a band 8.5 or a band 8 in the IELTS. The last thing that you must do when you're writing the essay task in the IELTS is to proofread. Proofreading means going through your written task, your written content, to first correct your errors and mistakes, and second, improve your writing. I'll take those 2 things again. You proofread your essay to correct errors and then to improve your writing. Ideally, you should proofread your essay twice. The first time you're reading through, you're checking your spelling errors, you're checking your grammatical errors, you're checking your punctuation errors, you're checking if you use the right words. After that, you reread your essay to improve it. This is the part where you see the words that you've used and you think of alternative words that you could use. You think of better words that express perfectly the concept or the ideas that you are trying to convey. At this point, I always use what I call the read aloud method. Read aloud method simply means that I read my essay by mouthing it off to myself. I sound out the words to my own hearing. Now, I do not mean that you should start reading out at a very high volume that would disrupt or distract all the other test takers or candidates sitting beside you. When I'm reading out something to myself, you may not hear my voice, but I can hear it in my mind. And the fact that I'm using my mouth to form those sounds and to say it out in a way that only I can hear it helps me. What is the role of this? When you sound out your essay, when you read out to yourself, chances are that you will notice the places where you repeated words. The things that normally your eye will skim through. The things that normally your eyes will pass over when you're reading. Because what your eyes and your brain can see is this is a correct sentence. There are no spelling errors. This full stop is where it's supposed to be. The comma is where it's supposed to be. This sentence is good. But when you read it out to yourself, your ear tells you, this doesn't sound right. This doesn't sound natural. This sounds repetitive. That is when you can improve your essay. What are the things that you shouldn't do for you to get a band 9? What are the things that you must not do in your writing task zone? The first thing that you must not do will be to ignore what the task requires of you. If the essay tells you that you should discuss the advantages and disadvantages, and you go ahead to talk about only the advantages because those are the ideas that you can generate comfortably, you will lose marks for task response. Remember, task response is the most important criteria on which your writing is assessed. Losing marks for task response automatically means that you're not going beyond a band 6.5 or a band 7. What you also want to do, or what you also want to be careful and not do, is to try to be too complex. A lot of times, we see a lot of information on the internet that says that we should use complex structures when writing. Yes, it is good, because for the grammatical range and accuracy part, what you are assessed on is, did you use a wide range of grammatical structures and did you use them accurately? While range is important, do not sacrifice accuracy on the altar of range. If you're using complex sentences in every paragraph, you're using 4-5 complex sentences, chances are that you will have problems with punctuation. Where do you put your commas? Where do I separate the ideas in that sentence? You don't want to write long, unwieldy sentences. This will only set you up for failure. So, as much as you want to use complex sentences, try to have a clear idea of the number of complex sentences that you want to appear in your essay. 2 complex sentences in my introduction, 1 per body paragraph, 1 in my conclusion. I have been able to demonstrate a wide range of grammatical structures. The other part of the essays will be a mixture of compound and simple sentences. This is okay. Ensure that your plan is simple. Follow through the plan. The IELTS is not the place for you to impress the examiner with how much dictionary words you know. The IELTS is not a place for you to impress the examiner with how much grammatical terms or theories or concepts that you have crammed in your mind. What you want to do, the most significant task that has been assigned to you in the IELTS writing, is communicate your ideas clearly, effectively, and in the most convincing way possible. Do this and you are assured of a band that is way beyond what you've gotten before, way beyond your current level, and that is close to native-like competence in the English language.